Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Coaches, One Topic. And today we have a great topic, and I'm super excited to be welcoming Kerry for the first time.
Hello.
Thank you, Kerry. And of course, we have the regular Wendy with her wisdom.
Here I am again.
Okay, so what we'll do before we start off, I will let Wendy and Kerry introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their businesses and where they're dialing in from. So I'll hand over to you first, Wendy.
Okie dokie. All right, my name is Wendy Shaw. I'm based in Dubai. I've been here for 23 years. Still loving it. The sun is shining. Background, hospitality, training. That's been kind of the foundation. I discovered coaching back in 2006, 2007. And I love being nosy and curious. So, yeah, I love one-on-one coaching. I also love doing the training groups. And I even did an event last week for 150 people. So, I'm flexible. As long as I'm making an impact and playing with people's heads, hearts and guts, I'm a happy person. So, yeah, that's me really in a nutshell.
And you play with our heads, heart and guts so well, Wendy.
Oh, yes, I can juggle them.
Yes, you do. You do. Thank you so much. And Kerry, over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, good morning. My name is Kerry Smith, and I am an instructional coach in a primary school. I'm based in Abu Dhabi. I've been in the UAE since 1995, so I've lost count of how many years that is. But I have been in education for the past 30 years. I am not only an instructional coach, but I have 3 different complementary modalities that I work with: NLP, embraining, and I'm an emotional intelligence assessor as well. So those 3 complement each other. But I've just launched superherokids.me, a platform for every child to have a voice, which is my core belief.
Oh, nice. Right. After we finish this, I want to know more. Or we'll just do another 3 coaches, one topic around you.
Thanks.
Thank you and welcome. I'm like Kerry. I've been here since about 1995 or 94. It all merges into one. I'm based at the moment in Dubai, and I'm a joy and purpose coach, which focuses on parents and building that communication and connection. And I also run a group here in the UAE called Coaches Supporting Coaches. So that's me in a nutshell. Oh, and I have to highlight that I have just completed another 4-day training, which was absolutely awesome. And I will be taking all those skills I learned, and it was with Wendy for embraining. And myself and Wendy and another coach who did the course will be doing a 3 coaches, 1 topic all around embraining, because I'm sure you're thinking, what is it? Hold on. More to come. Right. On that note, our subject today, our topic, is communication, the stories we tell ourselves and others. So you two, when you got the brief that we're going to be doing this, what popped up for you?
For me, it's like, well, we are the narrators of our life, so we're each telling our story. I think from putting on my coach's hat, all of my clients, they come and they have their story of how things have got them to where they are today. So that really is our story. But then how do we communicate that is another key one as well. So fascinating. Made me stop and think about, what's my story? And then I realized, well, it depends who I'm talking to. So it's having different stories for different people, and how do we share our stories? I share a lot of stories when I'm training, because I want people to know that I'm human. So, you know, when people see you as a trainer or a coach, I want them to see that I'm a person too. So sharing my own experiences, I think, is key. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Kerry.
Yeah, well, what popped up for me first when I saw the topic was that I'm very aware that everybody has a different model of the world and everybody's running their own story, as Wendy said, but your story is completely different from somebody else's. And for them to be able to identify with you and build rapport with you, you have to tap into their story and their model so that you can communicate effectively with them.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things for me is I really sat back and reflected on how do, like you mentioned, both of you mentioned, it's just like, how do I portray myself? What stories do I tell? And, you know, where do I put the emphasis on my words, depending on the person that I'm talking to? And therefore, why do I do that? Am I still being authentically me when that happens? So can you give any examples of when maybe you've had that conversation with somebody and you afterwards you've reflected and go, you know what? I wasn't really, that isn't me. Why did I do that?
No, I think as long as, you know, there's a reason for sharing parts about you at that time. So, yeah, no, I remember when I was my very first teaching, and I did a cake decoration. You know, I started off as a chef. I did a cake decoration class, and I realised that it was adult education classes, and I was the youngest person in the room, and I am the teacher. And it's like, oh, this is a bit weird. I feel so young. But they were all sort of, I don't know, I hate to say it, frustrated housewives, perhaps. And they all they were there for the social element of it. But I walked in and they all went quiet, as if it was like, oh, how do I break this down? So I started off by sharing with them a personal story of mine that I made a cake, it was a birthday cake, I decorated it, and I went to put it into my car. The car door was locked, I put it on the bonnet, and by the time I opened the door, it had slid off and landed upside down. So all those beautiful roses I'd made were all squished. But I just laughed and I thought, oh, well. So I went back in and I iced the bottom of the cake. I made more roses and just did a bit more happy birthday. And because I started as a chef, and it was actually the birthday of one of the chefs that I worked with. And so when it came to cutting the cake, I had comments saying, Wendy, how did you manage to ice the cake all the way around? This is a whole new technique. And it was like, well, you know, there's a story behind that. So sharing that with, at the beginning of this cake decoration class, just put everybody at ease. It was just like, well, you know, I'm not perfect. But what can I bring that a little bit of humor, a little bit of I'm human too? I think that was a great starting point. And I had a couple of the ladies come to me and say, thank you for sharing. We thought you were going to be sort of all prim and proper. Okay.
Tutorial.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, how can you share a story that's relevant, that breaks the ice and sort of makes you appear more human? So that was my way of being authentic in that moment, I would say. Kerry, what about you?
Yeah, I love stories. I'm a teacher at heart. I teach children from 3 to 11. And of course, the best way to get rapport, to build relationships, to have them share with you is to tell a story. To make it more relatable, to make it more impactful. There's lots of different types of stories. You know, a story for me has to have a purpose or an end goal, if you like. So that if you're teaching a child something that they need to learn about behavior or morals, then you can do it through a story. But one of the best examples is not actually an education story for me. It was a story about doing a presentation. And I was in a workshop way back, 2012 or something like that, where the trainer and the presenter started a story about a trip to Sarawak, where they were canoeing down a river, and it was hard work to canoe down this river, and they had to get past lots of obstacles on the way. And then the trainer stopped at the cliffhanger of the story. And it ended up you wanted more, you wanted to find out what happened at the end of the story. And that was the hook that got the audience interested in what was going on. But it took the trainer 5 days to come back to the end of the story. Oh, wow. So at the end of the training, at the very last minute, the trainer reminded us, and do you remember on the first day we did this story about down the river in Sarawak? And at the end, she rounded up the training by, you've come a long way, you've come all the way down the river, you've had all these obstacles during the training, and you've been successful. And she won the race. So from that point, you could see the impact that storytelling has to make you be more authentic to your audience.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you pointed out about the stories having a purpose. I think a lot of times people will tell stories. Is it an ego thing? Is it to make them look good and make other people feel maybe a little bit inferior or put them in their place? Or is your intention to inspire and to empower? I think, before you rattle off a story, you need to reflect on that. Okay, so what about, sorry, go ahead.
Adding on to what Kerry's saying, I'm familiar with that because in NLP, it's called nested loops. So we come up with metaphors and it's more about eliciting the state. So bringing in that curiosity and getting people into those states that you want them to be in for the training. So, yeah. Excellent trainer, Kerry, obviously.
Powerful, because I've remembered it 12 years, 15 years later,
Yeah. But it's also interesting when you do it in your personal life as well. Sometimes like with the kids when they're young and they just go on and on and on, and it's just like, get to the point. I love you dearly. But what are you trying to say here? You've lost me. So teaching kids how to do that is an art form as well. I'm losing sound. Is anybody else losing sound?
No, we're just not talking, Donna.
Oh, no. Okay, so not only do we do the storytelling to others, but let's explore a little bit more about the stories we tell ourselves. Brené Brown does, I will try and find it and add it to the links, but she did a really, really empowering piece about be careful who you share your stories with and the stories that you tell yourself. So I know both of you are NLP lovers. So yeah, tell us a bit more about that.
Okay, I think, well, NLP is really about modeling excellence. If you want to do well at something, then you find somebody who's good at that, work out how they do it, and then model it. And a lot of that comes down to internal communication. So how you communicate with yourself on the inside. What do we say to ourselves? I was thinking about it this morning, and I've shared before on these talks that, I feel very lucky that I had two very different grandmothers. I had a super positive one, and I had one who was very pessimistic. And I think a lot of this comes from our environment because of where we grow up and who we grow up with and all of those circumstances, what's happening in the country at the time. But all of that shapes and programs us. So, in terms of, I was thinking about, well, what do I tell myself? And I catch myself giving myself a hard time, and I'm lucky because I can flip it over and say, okay, Wendy, what's the opposite of that? So yeah, I think you get more of what you focus on because you bring it into your awareness. So when I say to myself, oh, I can't do that, then I can ask myself some questions saying, what stopped me? what would happen if I did do that? So we're telling ourselves, these beliefs that pop in that, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I can't do something. Or if you blame it on your circumstances, I say blame, and we can't usually control our circumstances, but I think you get what you focus on. So just by flipping that over, rather than focusing on what you can't do, what can you do? What's stopping you from moving forwards? And I think that's where it kind of all falls into the coaching bit as well. But yeah, I catch myself sometimes, and I think the last time I went home, I caught up with a friend, and she said, "Oh, Wendy, I could never live in Dubai." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. She couldn't, because that's what she's telling herself.
Yeah,
it's not something that I planned to do, but this opportunity came along. And I thought, what would happen if I did? So I went for it. So it's yeah. So a lot of it's down to our programming, but then we can reprogram ourselves. So the beliefs that we have, we can change those beliefs. We have that power to change some of our beliefs. If they're no longer serving us or holding us back, change them. It's about growing up.
I love the way you said that, Wendy, because I'm just looking down at my notes here and thinking, right, what else can I add to exactly the same thing I've got on my notes, Wendy? So I think I can flick the perspective into children's coaching a little bit. When people say, I'm not good at maths, I'll never be able to learn this, I'm in above my head, my usual mantra is fake it till you make it. Sort of believe that you could or you can, and if somebody else can do it, then you can model it on them. So for children in a class, I usually tell them, okay, who is good at maths in the class? Who can you go work with right now to learn that? And it is, yes, I agree wholeheartedly, Wendy. It's about reshaping old beliefs that don't serve you anymore. So I've taken huge numbers of years to learn that. That I am actually good enough, and I am my own person, and I do my own expertise well, even though other people may choose not to believe that or choose not to tap into that. And it's about focusing on what I want, and to get rid of all of those old beliefs that I used to think I wasn't good at teaching or coaching.
Yeah.
I had one come up the other day. I was trying to work out a percentage from the total, but deduct the percentage. And I just got so stuck. I can't do maths. I'm no good at numbers. I'm number dyslexic. I remember hearing my mum saying that she was number dyslexic a long time ago. So whenever I struggle, I just use that as an excuse, but it's sunk in as a belief.
Yeah. It's funny because after whilst I was doing the embraining course, I wanted to practice listening to people when they were talking with regards to their head, heart, gut, where was it, all this. And as I live alone, I wasn't able to. So I thought, okay, what shall I do? Trash TV. Let's watch some reality TV. So I watched like a little bit of different ones. And there was one with some celebrities and what have you. But it was so surprising. Well, no, it wasn't surprising. It's sad that everybody was still having, no matter what level of success they had, where they came from, what religion, whatever, all of them were talking about this feeling of insecurity, not good enough. And it's funny that you should mention, Kerry, some of them were saying we fake it until we make it, but they're not feeling it. They're not embodying it. And, these people that if you look at face value, you think they've got the confidence, they've got everything. And yet, again, they're resorting back to that almost childlike state. So yeah, it was very interesting. Okay, so when you have clients who come to you with this issue, how can you support people, or what can people do for themselves to, first of all, do that initial identification that this is happening?
I like to play with masks. For me, as putting my emotional intelligence coaching hat on, there are 3 masks that I would play with. The first one is, what mask do you present to the outside world? Mm-hmm. If you, no matter whether you're a child, a trainer, an executive, whatever, what do you say and do in the outside world so people will believe you and believe that you're true to yourself? And what do you want them to think of you while you're wearing this mask? So there's a few coaching questions around that. And then flip it to, what's your mask actually hiding? What do you do so they won't see behind that mask? So what are you afraid? And I use the word afraid very carefully, because I don't want to lead them. What are you afraid that the world will see if you take down that mask? And it all links back to that not good enough, or not being loved enough, or not being safe, or not feeling protected. So once you break down those masks, you then get to the more authentic issue or problem that you can then deal with through another modality like embraining.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. For what's coming up for me when you mentioned that, my mask, I would say, is my humor. Definitely, I use that in appropriate times and inappropriate times. But it is an armor. It's a shield. It's a mask that, you know, when you're feeling insecure or unsafe, then that has been the go-to deficit of make somebody laugh and take that attention away from you.
Yeah. For me, I always go, I think my default on this is perception is projection. Mm-hmm. So if this is how you're perceiving your story, your life story, or your issue, whatever, then how are you then projecting that onto the world? And I think, you know, if we look at how we communicate now, it's massive. Social media. I bumped into a guy I worked with many, many years ago when I first came to Dubai, a month ago. And he said, Wendy, I'm always seeing you, all these amazing things that you're doing on social media. Your life looks amazing. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't post the bad days.
Yeah.
So what are we putting out there? What are we communicating? I think there's a massive disconnect now. And when it comes to, you know, really thinking about what I perceive in the world, and then I'll be projecting it, of course. But what I perceive now, I know, sort of going home and sort of spending time with family, we're all connected to these devices. So we're on our phone, we're on our watching TV, we're on our laptops, we're on our iPads, whatever. We are so connected with the world that we're disconnected with other people. So when I see people, you know, putting their focus on a device rather than me, and I'm sitting in front of them, then, you know, they're communicating to me that I'm not important.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, and maybe this is just me being old now, but I grew up in back in the day before mobile phones, where we used to sit down and have a meal together. TV went off, and it was our kind of our family time to talk. And then you share, you learn. And I think one of the big things that stands out for me, I've got a big family, and last weekend, I was trying to collect some photos for a project. Every photo has a whole story behind it. Yeah. And it took me ages because I was going down memory lane. And I remember as a kid, sort of Granny would pull out the photo album, and it'd be like, oh, hurry up, Granny, I just want to see the pictures. but she had a story behind each one and what was happening and who was there. And, you know, that's the environment I grew up in. So for me, storytelling was everything. And the stories that we learned from our elders, and this goes across cultures as well.
Yeah.
That's how we learned wisdom. But how do we learn it now if mum and dad are connected on their phones, or they're too busy and they're not having that quality time with their kids? You know, if you eat and in front of the TV watching something, you're not talking. So
so important.
I'm going off on one.
No, you're not going off on one, but it's so important that is being lost. That is where that connection, and you know, you can always do morals behind the story. If you don't like a certain behavior with your children or your husband or what have you at that particular point, you can effectively and diplomatically put it in a story. But so do you feel that we are losing that art form of storytelling and sharing?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you think back, stories have been around since the cave dwellers in France. They've been around since the cliff dwellers in Arizona. You know, stories have been around through history for decades, centuries. But nowadays, children and adults don't have the amount of time together just to share stories or to play or to get together. Everybody's busy. The pace of life is really super fast. And you notice it in the behaviors of children, because when they're tantruming, when they're doing naughty behavior that you would call that's not acceptable, they just need the time of the adults to sit with them, to share their story as to why this behavior is important. And if the adult just doesn't sit there and communicate with them, there's no way that you're going to change the behavior.
Can I please say something on this? Because I hear this a lot, even when I was teaching. I mean, I was teaching for 26 years, and I hear it so much, and I think it's a cop-out. A lot of times parents are saying, you know, well, we just don't have time.
Yeah,
you do. You're just not making it a priority. You know, I can't, I've got to do this. And the next minute that, you know, the husband's off playing golf or the mother's off at the spa, this, that, and the other. There is time. If this is as important for you, you will make time for it. And, you know, passing on those life skills, and life skills do come into it. You're learning to listen, you're learning to empathize, you're learning to bottom line, you're learning to uplift others. There's so much learning in sitting around a dinner table and having that conversation.
Yeah.
So
and learning social skills as well. You know, how many times have you seen in the supermarkets here in the UAE children who are just running around and fighting with their brothers and sisters and whatever? I've seen it so many times when I go into a supermarket and see these kids. It's like, yeah, parents, you haven't spent time preempting what you expect. You know, teaching that child in the 2 minutes before you go into the supermarket, right, in this supermarket, you're going to help me get the shopping. This is what I expect from your behavior. Because the kids are going, right, I'm bored, I'm fed up, I don't want to be in the supermarket, but they're not involved, and the parents don't involve them. They want to get round as quickly as they can, get the messages and get out of there. But unless the children are involved and playing and being, I don't know, stimulated, if you like, then the behavior will start. And if without putting in that time, as you said, Donna, nothing's going to change. And the communication that child is trying to give the parent will be completely lost and over their heads.
Yeah, it's how to actively engage them and set the expectations. You know, this is why Super Nanny is so popular. She needs a whole brigade of super nannies to help families sort of just. What is it? It's back to basics. It's setting. This is the expectation. I'm sorry, I shouldn't chip in here. I'm not a first person parent. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you're a child. You are a child of a parent. So
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah. I have my babies too, but they're not my mum.
No, but again, it's funny how you mentioned super nanny, because again, it's looking for external people to fix your problem, when you know, if you sit down with the parents and you're talking to them, what's missing? Oh, the kids don't listen to me, there's disconnect, there's this, that, and the other. Okay, so how are you being the role model that the children need to see?
Yeah.
You know, so hiring somebody or a maid to look after your children and then still complain, it's, you know, you need to sit down and have these conversations. And again, through having that conversation with your children, with your partner, you get this remarkable feeling of belonging. And you're not alone. And if, when you're sitting down and having that conversation, if you want to go off and talk about something else privately, you've already set this up to turn around and say, okay, I'll meet you in the bedroom and we'll discuss it there.
And
So,
I love that idea, Donna. And I love the things like, if you're meeting in the bedroom and discussing it, for older children, journaling or a worry box. I've seen that used a lot, where if the parent genuinely doesn't have time because they're working 2 jobs and they've got to come home and blah, blah, and the child's had an issue during the day, they stick it on a post-it note in the worry box, or they put it in their journal, and then at bedtime, when they're doing stories at bedtime, they just share and discuss.
But it's like when you go out though, Kerry, how many times have we gone out and you're in a restaurant and the parents, all members of the family, are on their phone in a restaurant? This is a great opportunity to then have these conversations. And a lot of the times people get stuck of, what do I say? I don't know how to have these conversations. They're strangers to me. In one of my parenting programs, I gave like 100 conversation starters, and we would put them on a piece of paper, fold them up, each question, put them in a bowl, and you'd pull them out. And all of them had underlying morals. What would you do? Has this happened to you? How did that make you feel? And it gives the parents an opportunity to go, oh, you know what? That happened to me when I was a child, and reveal things to their children that may not have ever come up in conversation.
Yeah, it's even, keep it simple, highs and lows. What's been a high for you today? What's been a low point today? And, you know, what support you need. That was really the asking for support. That was really the essence of the afternoon positivities I started during the pandemic. It was just reaching out to people, a little bit of sharing and connecting, but then we'd have a preset couple of questions. And then, what support do you need? Are you okay? So,
I used to say to my kids and the students because I was working in learning support, and I always used to ask them, what did you fail at today? Especially if it was the end of the day. And, you know, it was done in a fun way. I was very aware of my body language and facial expressions and tone of voice. And we would have a laugh. Okay, so what did you do? What could you do differently? What did you learn from there? And I would share stories where I had failed that day. You know, maybe not everything, because I do say things that are inappropriate sometimes and not for children's ears. But yeah, and they loved that. They loved the fact that, oh, hold on a second. You know, Miss is also failing at something, but it wasn't a failure. We walked away saying, we gave it our best shot. It didn't work out this time, and next time we're going to do something. We'll take that information on board.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I've flipped it around now to have marvelous mistakes. What marvelous mistakes did you make today that we can fix? Or if it's embedded in one particular lesson, it's okay. So-and-so's made a marvelous mistake in their math. How can we fix it? What can we do to help each other?
Great learnings.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay, so Now, looking at the people that have the biggest impact on us, it may be our bosses, it may be our parents, it may be, you know, the who am I thinking of? Teachers. What can they do to give people space to share their stories with no backlash or repercussions? You know, there's no sense of shame of sharing. So what tips can you give them?
Well, it's about creating that culture, isn't it? I know in the leadership space now, you know, speakers, presenters, there's also this element of storytelling. How do you bring it to life? How do you share a little piece of yourself? So it needs to be supported, I'd say, in the workspace, creating that culture of sharing stories, sharing the challenges, sharing experiences, sharing mistakes. I think I've gone blank. Over to you, Kerry.
Not only just sharing activities and sharing space, listening. How many bosses have you had that didn't listen to your point of view, didn't listen to your model of the world, didn't understand it from your perspective? I always remember the story of you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you have to do double the amount of listening to the amount of talking. And bosses are very good at interjecting their own point of view, their own ideals. If they're angry with something that's happened, they'll project that onto you. Some bosses are very good at the blame game. And they wait until something is wrong before they actually say something to you, instead of catching the moments that you are doing something that's very good in terms of your productivity or the workplace. So I think for me, the key is double the amount of listening to talking.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Also,
oh, you remember?
Yeah. Okay, metaphors, analogies, similes, vignettes, all of these are great ways of bringing in stories. So yeah, it's bringing, the one that always pops into my mind, there's a beautiful video clip of it as well that I've used in programs because it is so beautiful. It's about the bonsai tree.
Oh,
the bonsai tree, you nurture it and you trim it and you take care of it. But the seed is the same as a normal tree. So it all comes down. You keep a bonsai small because it's in a small pot. So if you want to grow, you have to put your seed into or move into a larger pot. And it's like, wow, the learnings and meanings behind that was quite powerful. So that one just popped into my mind.
Yeah, no, and I think also some best places to go when you want to start building that connection and being able to tell storytelling. Get outside into nature, go to the beach.
Yeah.
Go to the park, or go for a forest walk. One of the best places to do it is a campfire.
Oh yeah, because it's all storytelling.
Turn off all your devices. Yeah, and that's where all the old yarns come from, isn't it? It's just like, and then somebody will bring out a guitar or something, and it's not just about telling that story, it's the whole ambience, it's the whole theatre behind it.
Yeah.
So what other things do you think people can do to start, if they're watching this and they're going, you know what, I really need to put in a little bit more effort, but where do I start? What are some of the things that they can do?
I think starting conversations, maybe reflecting at the end of the day and looking at, okay, what stories could I have brought in and sprinkled on my conversations today? So it's first of all, it's having that awareness of wanting to bring in more stories, but then it takes a bit of practice if it's not something that you're doing now consistently, but it's finding those opportunities and thinking about different stories to share. But also feeling confident in, whatever the environment, to be able to share some of your personal stories. A lot of people don't share because they don't want to be judged, they don't want to be blamed, they don't want to be criticized, so they kind of hold it back. But I think we should encourage more storytelling. And I think that's why I love being in the training and the coaching space, because it's all storytelling. It's all, what's your story? What's your experience? And we communicate the whole time.
Yeah.
It's not about, working on your laptop or communication.
Yeah. And I think because everybody shares stories in a different way, your story is unique. And it doesn't matter what the story is. It might not be entirely your authentic story. You might have changed an element of it to make a point or to lead your audience to where you want them to be if you're doing a presentation. The hooks of part of your unique journey towards where you are right now. And as coaches, we've all had a journey through probably some ups and downs to get us to where we are just now. But just manipulating that story so it fits with your point or your purpose in telling it is a really useful thing to be able to do. So writing down your story to begin with and pulling out the elements that you want to use for the purpose that you're telling your audience, and not putting in part of the story that's not relevant.
Yeah. And try and keep it as factual as possible, because if you start telling too many stories, you're going to get yourself confused as to what you've said, and it's not aligned with you. I have to share. So go on, Wendy. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I shared a story the other day, and I didn't want to prolong the delivery. I wanted to share and get to the point. I think some stories, because they're our stories, they're easy to tell, but then we add in bits that aren't really necessary. So it's about, I call it cutting the crap. But I shared a story the other day about my grandfather, and it wasn't my story, it was my uncle's story. But I owned it because I didn't need to explain my uncle and whatever. So I just trimmed it. But my grandfather, the view from his lounge was across the bay. So you could see the sea, you could see the island, you could see the clouds, you could see. And every day he would sit there and just gaze out at the view. So I owned it. And so I asked him, Granddad, don't you ever get bored with the view? And he said, every day it's different. Every moment it's different. Because he was looking at the sea and So I owned that one.
Yeah, and that was beautiful when you said that to us. It was right at the time where it resonated with all of us as well. I was going to mention there's this, and I will share it. I have to find it. One story that really, really has stayed with me. There's this American guy. He was in a high school sharing his story. Beautiful storyteller. And it was around his mum. And she used to be calling him when he was away doing stuff. And she says, how are you, son? I just want to talk to you. Mum, I'm busy. I can't do this. Then he got a busy job and she's trying to call him. And again, he's saying things like he can't speak to her right now. And behind all this, it was basically the mum saying, I love you. I just want to know that you're okay. Everything's all right. And him being a young man. And he was away and he got a phone call that she died. I have just killed the story. Sorry, but you need to watch this. Watch the audience, watch the young teenagers and their reaction to this story. And it was so powerful. And you could just tell when they go home, they're going to look at their parents differently. And hopefully with more appreciation that, as their parents, we're only here for a very short time and putting them off. So, this guy was fantastic at telling the story. So I will share this. Okay, so Do you have any other relevant stories that, you know what, you heard this story and it really did impact you? It could be from a family member, or it could be for somebody from work, or a student. The one that's really, really stuck with you.
I'll think of 22 later.
I know you do this all the time. Well, especially if it makes you sort of reflect on your behavior and it's affected your personal growth.
Jump to Kerry.
I think one that I can really relate to is when I was doing training with NLP and didn't really believe that this was the course for me, that I wanted to run out of the room on the first day and never come back. I then made a decision at that point that it was good for me, and decided to take one element of the training back into school and try it out. So I took state elicitation back to school. So, you know, kids are very animated and they can do angry very quickly with their facial expression, their body language. So I decided to put the belief structure of NLP to the test. And this would be my convincer that this course was for me. So I went back to school the next day and said, right, kids, come on, let's do angry. Show me, do angry. And they're going, you know, and the rest of it. And then do happy, do sad, do disappointed, do frustrated. And because these children could act as if they were doing that, and they could create a story around that, and they could make a picture book around this emotional stuff, that was my convincer that, you know, storytelling is very, very powerful. And children and adults as well can take the elements of emotion and put them into their story. So way back then, that was what convinced me that coaching and NLP and embraining and all of those modalities are very valuable to have. And storytelling is one of my number one tools in my toolbox, if you like.
Yeah. No, very powerful. Wendy, has it come back to you yet, or is it still vacant there?
Yeah, I'm an options person, so I've got thousands to choose from, and it's just like, just give me one, just one.
Just one.
Oh, and maybe some of your horizontal ones would be good.
Oh, you mean when I was lying down with a bad back for 2 years? Not my horizontal ones.
Yeah, there was a reason for it.
Yeah. Oh, but which one? Yeah, they're all scrambling. No, I'll share something that was shared with me on Friday. I was driving back from this big event, and the day before I'd given Rania some heart stickers, and I said, "Oh, just take those home and give them to your daughter." And so then she did, and then I got 28 notifications on my phone from Rania, thinking, "Oh my God, what's happened?" And it was 28 stickers. So it was her way of saying thank you. And I was trying not to. You know what it's like when you get so many notifications from one person, you think, "Oh my God, it's an emergency." But it wasn't. It was just her sharing stickers. So we're talking about it and laughing about it. And apparently the message came back. She's really curious. How is it that Auntie Wendy knows exactly what I want? And I thought, well, how am I going to send this back to her? You know, what would be my best response? And I said, I'll just let her know that Auntie Wendy, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, she was 7 too.
That's a great reminder. That is a great reminder, because the age gap, people, you know, the kids forget that once upon a time you were that age too. And you've also just sparked another memory for me. Is like when you're in contact with people that may have this big ego who are standing up in front of you, and, you know, remember, once upon a time they were a child as well. They came in bouncing with, these dreams and wonderful expectations of what their life will be like. And, again, they have a story behind where they are and how they're acting now.
Yeah.
But with coaching, I mean, we're always asking, those questions of, well, who do you need to be in order, I want this, I want that, I want to have this promotion, I want to be this kind of parent. Well, who are you being and who do you need to be in order for this to happen? So, okay, before we wrap up, are there any things that you think people who are watching this would like to know more of? Or do you know of any good courses or books or something that to help improve their story taking? I mean, I know you've mentioned about journaling, and that is a great one. And all of us, we've all got a book inside of us. So, writing down those stories and capturing them is a good place to start.
I don't know. Before I logged on to this call, I was listening to the Diary of a CEO. I've just seen it tagged. I've seen it before, but he's interviewing Jimmy Carr, and it's like, oh wow, he's got some great examples of storytelling, and it's all kind of his story. But I think this is where I want to explore more of is one of my regrets. No, one of the things I feel I am missing is I didn't know enough about my dad. I wish I knew more about my dad's story, but his version rather than what other people say. So I think learn as much as you can from other people's stories. We're all different. But even, I've never been a great fan of Jimmy Carr, but I'm liking him a lot more now because I'm understanding and seeing insights into him. So, yeah, I think be curious about people and find opportunities to, learn who they are. Kerry mentioned at the beginning about different models of the world. We all have unique stories. I grew up with my older brother, but we have very different stories. So, yeah, I'm going to be a lot more curious about him when I go home.
No, that's nice. I'll go on to Diary of a CEO and I'll find that and pop the link in here as well so people can have
There's some really good ones on there.
Yeah. He did a really powerful one with Mel Robbins. Really powerful. I took copious amount of notes for that. So Kerry, what would you say?
I think bolting onto the books idea, The Warrior, the Strategist and Me is a great title. Let me just see. I can't see it on my bookshelf right now as to who wrote it. Oh, yes, I can. Hold on. Floyd Woodrow. He's a very good guru. This one.
Okay.
He's an ex-SAS operative who has his own business directing people with their life compass to what they want to achieve. And they've got some great strategies and ideas in there for how to achieve what you want in life.
Oh, you had me at ex-SAS.
Yeah, I've seen him live in Dubai. He was at a conference that I was at. Very powerful storyteller, very powerful life story.
Yeah.
And his advice and ideas and practical things to do in his book is just an amazing one.
Oh, I shall be checking that one out. Absolutely. But again, this is the thing. This is when you get together and you start sharing stories of the events. This is how you can put things in perspective and look at what was actually true. What did I assume? What am I adding? Where are those insecurities coming from? And so when you're relaying those stories, it goes from thinking to talking to speaking it. and you're hearing that back as well. So it is a very, very powerful reflective exercise to do. So, all right. Okay. So I will be checking that out. Right. So before we go, any passing comments, any wisdom bombs or anything that you would like to drop?
Yeah. Just really to kind of own your stories. And if you don't like your story, I find the best question, and this comes out to timeline therapy, but there's one question there. What is the learning of which that I can let this negative emotion, whatever, go easily and effortlessly? So get the learnings from your stories. If you've got stories, if your story is because this happened, that's impacting me now. If this has happened, that's the reason why I can't do X, Y, Z. Stop and consider, what can you learn from your stories so far, that the learning of which can allow you to move forward in the future. So you're not carrying those stories along with you if they're not empowering you, if they're not helping you. I just think that one question is so, so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Kerry, anything?
Well, my philosophy of everyone has a voice to be heard.
Yeah.
So whatever the story, whatever their age, they all have something important to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you both said, and I agree with what you were saying, Wendy. I've taken that on board a lot. I didn't have an easy childhood, and things have happened. I mean, I'm nearly 53, so I've lived, and it's about those stories that have not always been very nice. Is how can I turn that around to being powerful, that is going to move me forward? That where's the growth there? Where's the gift in what has happened? And also to stop that blaming, to take some ownership and go, okay, next time I won't be doing that, or I won't allow another person to have that power over me. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think the message is, don't let your stories define who you are and who you can be. Yeah, my bestie back in the UK, oh, wow, she has had so many challenges thrown at her. And it's almost like every 3-4 years, there's another huge, huge challenge in her life. But she is the most fun, the most caring, the most supportive, the most dynamic. I look at her sometimes and think, how can you not let this get you down? And she says, I have my moments, but what can I do about it? I embrace it, I do what I can, and I move on. And I think that's why she's one of my besties. So much. What's the word? Joie de vie. Joy of life. Yeah.
Well, that's it. You got to remember, you are going to have moments. Most of the times when you can flip things or reframe something, this is great. You can, reshape your story. There will be times where it feels heavy, and, have that grace for yourself. Again, you're human, and that's when you can look at what's going on around you and why is this affecting me more than it would normally. So okay, all right, ladies, thank you so very much. I will pop in all those tips and links and everything, and when I air this. So on that note, thank you very much. And if you're watching, have a great evening. And if you've got any comments or questions, please pop them in the comment section. Have a good one. Thank you very much.